As we delve into the latest on today's voting process, we have here with us our guest, Dr. Haneen Alghabra. She's the Associate Professor of Communication and Cultural Studies. Good afternoon, Dr. Haneen. How are you today?
Thank you for having me.
It's we're very glad to be able to have you here to talk to us. I'd like to ask you, beginning with the candidates running for the National Assembly elections 2022, who began, they began on the 29th of August, submitting their papers to the Interior Ministry, Elections Affairs Department until September 7th. With the female candidates reaching 22 women so far for the National Assembly elections, how do you view such a figure representing the return of women and their contribution to the political arena?
I think it's great because women are demanding political participation, and we're in need of emancipation, not just in Kuwait but worldwide in general. And so there's a lack that we need, if that makes sense. But basically, women are trying to get into parliament. They're trying to occupy leadership roles, and I feel like the women that are running, I respect them so much for a very good reason, is that these women are running in a one-vote electoral system, which means that the chances of them winning are very slim. And so I respect them for, even if they don't enter the parliament, because I only see maybe one max if we get any into parliament, women getting in. But I feel like if the fact that they're running is they're making a statement as well, right? So it's not just only about getting into parliament, but it's also about making a statement, because it's very hard for us to get in with the one vote system. And so I really think that this is a courageous move.
All right, but the political rights of women witnessed the long march spanning over time. There have been repeated demands for women's participation in the political life, accompanied in the beginning of the constitutional era. Can you just shed some light with regards to the history of the political contributions of women?
So women historically have been contributing to the country in general. So even like in the 50s, there was a protest where a bunch of women came out and burned their abayas. In the 60s, you had an association developed. I think it was called the Family or Women's Family Association. But then you had the Women's Cultural Society. After that, we had Nadi al-Fatat. So you had, which is a national sports association, and so you have all these associations that helped with, starting or fighting for the emancipation of women. And then in the 90s, which is really overlooked, especially in the Gulf War, women had a key role in fighting the Iraqi occupation, which I think is not really highlighted as much. And so throughout, the women that were in parliament, women that have occupied leadership positions, whether it's ministry or whether it's anywhere. And so you're even seeing more women. I mean, I was surprised today when I walked into the studio and I found a whole camera crew of women, and it actually brought joy, And so all these different positions, women are starting to fill in. But the problem is we also don't want to be tokenized. So having that one woman in between 10 men, and so we need it to be more of a 50-50 equal participation. But women have historically, worldwide, been fighting for their political rights.
Right. If you talk about women, I mean, women have traditionally in Kuwait been able to teach, to be able to do more. So that is, we're going back before independence. So women have been a cornerstone of our society, and we've just evolved from there, and we are able to achieve more.
That's important, because I think if you're evolving, you need to evolve with more participation. So I think that's a very important point. And so, well, with 22 women we've got running, how do you think it could go? Do you think women would primarily vote for women, or do we have a larger group of men who think the women are able to do a great job and will? That's an important question, and I think we're not there yet, because the problem is we're in a patriarchal society, right? And that's worldwide. It manifests differently from country to country, depending on where you are. But so if we have this thinking that men are better than women, right? And it doesn't mean that all men or all women think like that. But you have a lot of women, we're talking about women now, because we already know that there are a lot of men that might think like that, but a lot of women that are they're embodying and internalizing this patriarchy. So they're not thinking, I'm going to go vote for a woman, or I need to form alliances. So the problem is, for the core fundamental issue is we don't have alliances. So women are not you know, men actually have this that we don't have. There's no alliances between us. And so if we can't form alliances, how are we going to get into these positions? How are we even going to form allyship with men? So first it begins with women forming alliances within themselves, right? Okay. Because we're all fragmented right now. And a lot of women aren't, you know, you see that a lot, like, especially with the older, like, I think with the newer generation, it's much more better, but you see that especially with, like, the mothers sometimes, like, they're internalizing this patriarchy. You know, my son is better than my daughter. Like, these narratives are a reflection of a huge societal problem that is going to hinder women from becoming or getting into any political position or having any leadership role.
What I would like to ask is, during the several stages, women have faced several stages where they've met determination with a very clear path of equality. And those efforts were crowned with success on the 16th of May 2005, when the National Assembly passed a law enabling women to participate in the political candidacy and election. Can you delve into the advantages of women seizing this right, and how does it reflect in the country's 2035 vision?
I remember this was a victorious day. I mean, I still remember the day so clearly, because women were protesting from years before that, especially in 2004. And in 2005, and you know, even the Emir of Kuwait in 1999, he was very supportive of this.
Yes.
So here we have our, you know, right to vote in 2005. And then now we have the vision, right? And Kuwait's vision is very similar to the UN. There's some similarities with the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Okay.
So the UN Sustainable Development Goals, they want clean energy, clean water, environmental concerns, gender concerns, inequality. That's two, where you know, racism and sexism, basically, right? So gender and race, but. And Kuwait's development goal is to be a financial hub and to attract investors. Correct. So you're looking at a democracy. A democracy is never fixated. So a democracy can never evolve, ever, if it's hindering half of its citizens. So if we have women participating equally, then our democracy will actually grow. Because a democracy is a combination of the political system, you know, the education system, the laws, the legal, the media. Yes. Everything comes together, religion, culture, traditions. So if we're not evolving, so what happens is we have this democracy, but we're not evolving. Okay. So it's almost like a partially functioning democracy. So if we don't have women with, you know, being participating equally, we're not going to be able to be that, to even fulfill the 2035 vision.
All right. Before we continue with our guest, Dr. Haneen, let's take a look at the role of women in Kuwaiti society, which is vital in order to develop societal, economic and political aspects of the country. Over the years, women have held many leadership positions, with the most recent being the appointment of 8 female judges for the first time in the country's history. More in the following report. Well, going back to Dr. Haneen, our guest in the studio today. Dr. Haneen, I'd like to ask you, during this year's elections, there's a record number of women running to secure a place in the National Assembly. Now, can you tell us about the significant role of women in the elections and how important it is to have women representatives during this National Assembly?
I think it's very important because, first of all, women are more likely to tackle women's issues. Whether it's violence or abuse or education or childcare or whatever it is. But I think another important point is that women need to vote for women. Okay. And everyone needs, I mean, we need to vote for more women, but I think there's a significant role because if you look at research, and this is, you know, like solid research from the UN, from other research institutes, women are more likely when they're in parliament, they're more likely to focus on peace development, peace initiatives, on development, economic development, women's issues. So you have like a plethora of issues that women are good at. So they add to the table.
They bring more pluses to the table.
Yes.
Yeah. Since we spoke of women's role as representatives and shed some history on her journey in the political life, how about the importance of today's female voters? Would you advise this important segment of Kuwait society to do for during today's democratic manifestation, hence the National Assembly?
Yeah, so it goes back to the question you asked me earlier, is how do we get women to form allyship, right? And so we answered that, but so then it becomes, you know, like women need to vote. And whether they're voting for men or for women, but we need to get more women on the table. And so I think it's really significant. And I think this question is important because they need to go out, first of all, they need to go out and vote.
Right.
Second, we need to bring in good female candidates, right? Because let's also be honest that not all female candidates, like all male candidates, are not going to be as effective once they get into parliament. So what kind of women do we need to get into the parliament that are women that have the country at, you know, at their in the center fold, right?
Correct. Yeah.
The economy, development, human rights issues, all these different avenues, education, etc. So I think we need to look at it as a whole picture too.
All right. Just before we carry on with the updates, let's take a break, and we'll be right back. And we are back with our guest here in the studio, Dr. Haneen Alghabra. As we saw here in Kuwait, the leadership has been always empowered women and continues to empower them and look at it as a priority. And as the Kuwait Vision 2035, women will be pushed further towards achievements and developments. And in its role in society keeps getting greater and greater in this sense. Can you tell us how women in Kuwait paved the way for the future generation with the blessing of the leadership to innovate and become a vital pillar of Kuwait's future?
Well, you can see that ever through time, you know, from our great grandmothers down to our mothers and aunts and etc. But I think, you know, women have systematically increased their leadership roles and their political participation. And yes, they have been supported. And I think that what's really important is that women are finally occupying more positions.
True.
And so we see that, and we see that happening, especially recently. You know, with the 8 judges and more women ministers and more parliament members. We're hopeful that we're going to have even more. And so I think this is the positive aspect of it.
Well, you've been a great addition to this update, Doctor, and we've really enjoyed interviewing you and having a chat with you about everything that's been going on. We'd like to thank you for being here, Dr. Haneen Alghabra. Is there anything you'd like to say before?
No, thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure having you and talking to you about things.
Yes, you too.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, that was Dr. Haneen Alghabra. So thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Before we take a break, let's take a look at a survey concerning our discussion.